Welcome to the LeaderImpact podcast. We are a community of leaders with a network in over 350 cities around the world, dedicated to optimizing our personal, professional, and spiritual lives to have impact. This show is where we have a chance to listen and engage with leaders who are living this out. We love talking with leaders, so if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions to make the show even better, please let us know. The best way to stay connected in Canada is through our newsletter at leaderimpact.ca or on social media at LeaderImpact. And if you're listening from outside of Canada, check out our website at leaderimpact.com. I'm your host, Lisa Peters, and our guest today is Keri Schwebius. Keri is the president of Ellevate Executive Coaching, co-author of a leadership book called Mind the Gap, Navigating Your Leadership Journey, as well working for her father to support him in running his businesses. Before all this, Keri spent 20 years in public relations, helping executive teams communicate with stakeholders. During this time, her passion was employee communications, making her a messenger, translator, and advisor for leaders. This inevitably led to her field of leadership. Today, Keri is a certified executive coach with a Master of Arts in Leadership and a graduate certificate in executive coaching at the Royal Roads University in Victoria, BC. She also holds accreditation in emotional intelligence, change management communications, and team building. She brings a down-to-earth approach to every engagement. She's incredibly grateful for all the blessings she has been given in her life, and more than anything, she wants to give something back. Her purpose is to make a difference in the world, and she does this by partnering with others who want to improve their workplaces. Keri has a genuine desire to make a positive change in the world, not only working with clients, but also as co-chair of Women in Leadership Saskatchewan and as chair of the board of directors of City Kids Regina. Join us now for a conversation with Keri on dealing with imposter syndrome in your personal, professional, and spiritual journey. Hello, Keri. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Lisa. Thank you for having me here today.
Well, I'm super excited to just get into this topic because this subject intrigues me. And when I read your book, Mind the Gap, and it really is that leadership journey, right? From being on the team to leading the team. Mm-hmm. And somewhere in between there, I think there can be a little bit of imposter syndrome. So I'm really excited to get going on this. So if you're ready to go, let's jump in. Okay?
Absolutely.
All right. So I know that I first wanted to ask this question because we have spoke before, and we've talked about just life being hard. And it's funny because I sometimes just want to hear it from a coach like Keri. Life is hard. And I just want you to tell everybody that because maybe it'll just make me feel better. But
life is hard.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There are moments of joy and love and wonderfulness, but there are so many parts of the human experience that are so hard. And a lot of things we have absolutely no control over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think we forget that. I think that we forget we have no control over this and we have to step back. Mm-hmm. And I know that I have loved every minute. I had a leadership coach, currently not with one, but they always made you feel that just step away from it because not everybody has the answers. So I'm glad to engage in this conversation with you. So my first question to always everybody is tell us a little bit about your personal journey, but I want to hear about becoming a leadership coach and an author because this doesn't happen overnight. And I mean, you were 20 years in public service or public relations, but how did you get to where you were?
Yeah. So I loved communications. And like you mentioned in my bio, I loved employee communications and really helping employees to have the information they needed to do their jobs and manage the change in organizations, which we know is persistent. And I really started to love the idea of leadership and being that in between the executive and employees. I could see, okay, what are executives saying? And then what are executives doing? And so I started to really get interested in leadership. I started reading a lot of books about leadership. And then I was at a point in my career where I felt like, okay, I'm ready for something new. And that's when I decided to do my master's degree. So I did that for 2 years while I kept working. And when I was done, I felt stuck. I felt
Mm.
stuck I had changed jobs in between as well. But I felt like all of this knowledge that I had gained, I wasn't fully able to share it or to make use of it in the role that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And and I got frustrated. And I also felt like because I was feeling frustrated, I wasn't able to show up as the leader that I really wanted to be for the people who were reporting to me. So I made the decision to leave and start my executive coaching business while I also worked with my dad. And so I went away, did my schooling at Royal Roads, and then when I'm coaching people, I found that I have lots of opportunities to share my knowledge about leadership.
Mm-hmm.
When I completed my coaching program, two of my colleagues and I sat down and decided we're going to write a book,
Mm.
and we all agreed almost instantaneously it's going to be about leadership. And so we, for 2 years, started working on this book, and we have really broad experience. So Doug works in policing. He is or he was the chief conservation officer in BC. Now he's serving as a assistant deputy minister. Heather works in education in Alberta, and I had mostly a corporate background, and I'm here in
Mm.
Saskatchewan. So, we had this breadth of experience that we could share, and so we just started throwing together all these ideas about leadership, and we would each take a chapter
Mhm.
and write about it, and then we brought it together in this book. So the overall process was 2 years of writing, and then going through edits and working with our publisher, and then getting that out just in January of this year.
Wow. So how did you come to meet Doug and Heather? I mean, was it through Royal Roads
Yeah,
or?
yeah. So we all met at the coaching program at Raw
Okay.
Roads, and the program has a cohort model. So you meet your class, you go actually physically to Royal Roads for
Okay.
a week, and you get to know these people, and then through the next 9 months, you work virtually.
Yeah.
So Heather and Doug and I actually weren't in any similar groups or anything, but we actually arrived and on campus at the same time. Heather and I actually met in the Edmonton airport, and just kind of clicked. We just had there was just something about the two of them that I really just was drawn
Yeah.
to. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's good. Now, we're not gonna, I mean, Mind the Gap is an amazing book, and I think it's a really great book for those people that are that transition between I'm on the team to I'm leading the team. But
Hmm.
but we're going to cover that one small area of imposter syndrome, and I know it's like quite early in the book. So, my first question, for anyone who doesn't know, but what is imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So imposter syndrome is there are a few words for it. So some people call it limiting beliefs, some people call it cognitive distortion, but it really is the belief that I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough to be
Yeah,
where I am or to pursue something. And
yeah.
I think that women tend to experience it more than men.
The word phony or fraud comes. We feel phony, or we
Yeah.
feel like a fraud, like we don't deserve. Those are
Yeah.
the words that come to my mind when I think of imposter syndrome.
Yeah. And I think that so there's a statistic that men will apply for a job that they're partially um, qualified for, but women won't apply for a job until they check all the boxes.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why that is. And I'm thinking it's something historical, and the
Hmm.
expectations that are put upon women. But it makes me sad actually to think
Yeah.
that we don't reach for those things that we could totally grow into.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I read just doing a little bit of research prior to talking to you, and it's the term was first used by psychologists. There was
Hmm.
two psychologists in 1970, and they talked about it a little bit. They said applies mostly to high achieving women,
Hmm.
and it's funny because we don't show it.
Hmm.
We look. I mean, I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, and we see what we see, but deep inside, we have that. I don't feel worthy. I don't feel like I'm good enough, and we're really sabotaging ourselves. We're hurting ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, so I'll give you an example. When you show up to a meeting and, you know, it's the first time maybe you meet a group of people, or maybe you've just been promoted and now you get to attend whatever it is, the senior management meeting. And you look around that table and, you know, you think to yourself, wow, these people, like they're all in these leadership roles and they've got these, you know, amazing careers, and I don't belong here. I don't fit here. And I think what we forget is that everybody is trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Nobody has all the answers.
Yeah.
Nobody knows all of the information. And that's the reason why they bring teams together, so that, you know, people can have their different areas of expertise. And no matter what your background is or what your experience is, even, you know, somebody right out of university brings a perspective that is valuable to the team.
Yeah. So before we get into sort of how do we get over it, or how do we
Mhm.
get past it, I don't know if you can just point out some sort of some common signs
Mhm.
of imposter syndrome. You
Mhm.
know, like I think of, like you said, you know, you go into a meeting and, you know, what am I doing here? Or you give a great speech and you're like, oh, that was no good. You know, that complete self doubt. I
Mhm.
sadly, I have, you know, can think of ways that I've done that. But I don't know if
Yeah.
you can think of, if someone's listening, you know, what are those signs of imposter? And it also could be just recognizing it in someone and talking to
Yeah.
them about it. But what
Yeah.
are signs that someone might have imposter syndrome?
So there are several signs, and it's different ways of looking at a situation. So, for example, all or nothing, or black or white, right? Like it's got to be perfect, or I'm a complete failure,
Hmm.
right? Um, but that's not really how it works. You know, life is complicated, and people are complicated and really complex, and there are a thousand shades of gray, and perfection is impossible. And so when we don't meet what we perceive to be that level of perfection, we think we're a failure.
Yeah.
And this is especially when it comes to social media, because, you know,
Mm.
there's so many things that we see every day that is just a tiny little snapshot of, you know, somebody's career or somebody's life, and it looks amazing, and we see like we don't measure up.
Yeah.
But it's not the big picture, right? It's one shining moment, and, you know, there are so many shining moments in our own lives as well. um, it
Yeah.
could be, you know, the mental filters that you see through. So if you decide, if you wake up in the morning and maybe you sleep in and your alarm doesn't go off, whatever, you sleep in and you wake up in a rush and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm having a terrible day. That mental filter is going to persist all through the day. So everything that happens, you're going to view through that negative filter. You know, my parking, somebody's in my parking spot. Oh, I'm having a terrible day. You know, oh, I got to wait for the elevator. Oh, it's a terrible day. Right?
Wow.
Sometimes these things wouldn't bother you on any other day, but you've made that decision, you know, right out of bed, that it's a bad day. And so that's how you see the world, rather than viewing the world as, you know, it is a great day and I'm awake and I'm alive and have a job that I get to go to, and, you know, I have a
Yeah.
roof over my head. And so, you know, there's that mental filter that people look for. Another thing is should. I
Mm.
should do this. I should get my kids off the video game. I should make, you know, an awesome dinner. I should do this, and we feel this, and this expectation of all these things that we should be doing in
Yeah.
order to be that, you know, amazing woman, amazing mother, amazing wife. And those shoulds are really just making us feel guilty when we don't measure up.
Yeah.
And so it's hard, but we need to let go of those shoulds.
Yeah.
For example, when I did my master's degree, I was working full time. I had 3 kids and a husband. And I decided at the beginning that my house was not going to be my priority. Should I keep my house clean? Yes, I feel like I should. But when I decided what's the priority here, what, like, I need to, I don't have endless amounts of time to do everything. So there's something that I just need to let go.
Yeah.
And my house over those 2 years became so cluttered.
Mm.
But at the end of it, I had a master's degree. I had learned so much. My family didn't feel like I had abandoned them at all. And when it was done, I decluttered my house and life went on. So
Yeah.
so letting go of some of those shoulds.
Yeah.
A labeling is another one that we do. So
Mm.
we look at other people and we label them based on what we see or what we
Yeah.
perceive that we see. Somebody's dressed differently than we are, or their hair's colored or whatever, and we make judgments about people. That's another area of cognitive distortion or
Wow.
limiting beliefs. One thing that we're all guilty of is jumping to conclusions or making up stories. So, for example, if you haven't heard from a friend in a couple months, you're thinking, "Oh my goodness, they haven't called me. What are they mad at me? What did I do?" And then you start going back to your last conversation and what did we talk about? And oh my gosh, and they're going to be so upset with me and how do I make it better? And then when you reach out to them and connect with them, you learn that it had absolutely nothing to do with
No.
you. But for some reason, we have to make up these stories in our heads and fill in these gaps.
Yeah.
Another thing about that negative thinking or limiting beliefs or imposter syndrome is discounting the positive
Oh.
and not stopping to recognize some of those achievements or even the things that we're really great at. So, have you ever received a compliment? Somebody says, "Hey, Lisa, you're really great at that." And you're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm okay. There's others who are
Yeah.
better." Right. Or, you get a really big project wrapped up and you've been working on it for months and you finish it up. And then you're like, "Okay, now what's next?"
Oh.
Rather than going, "This was
Terrible at
amazing."
that.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I did such an amazing job and look at me. Nope, it's just like, "Okay, now what? What's next
Yeah.
on the list?" And I think it's so important to, stop and recognize those wins.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
celebrate your success.
Yeah, for sure.
When you
Yeah.
were talking about should haves and you should I was just reading a leadership book and I think it's Essentialism by Greg McKeown, and he talks of I have to but replacing that with I get
Mm.
to go to work today. I
Mhm.
get to go to my son's baseball game, my daughter's baseball game. I get to, and just replace that positive
Yeah.
language. But yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I
It's not
get to
always
do
easy.
dishes.
Yes. Yeah.
I get to clean
I
the house.
Yes.
Yay. Okay, maybe not. All right. So I don't know I know you talked a little bit about when you went to Royal Roads and your house got a little cluttered, but do you
Mhm.
have any other personal experience, or was that that you have had just in regards
Mhm.
to imposter syndrome in your personal life?
Mhm. So when I decided that I was going to do my master's degree in leadership, I was pretty certain that that's what I wanted to do. I had been looking at Royal Roads for quite some time, so I knew that was the school I wanted to go to, and I'd considered, the MBA and the Master of Arts, and I was like, oh, I've been in the corporate world, an MBA maybe might, lots of people know what the MBA is. And actually, when I talked to my supervisor at the time, he said to me, "Why not an MBA?" And I thought, maybe I should do the MBA. But I thought about it a lot and I decided if I do an MBA, then people are going to expect me to do things that an MBA does. And I don't
Hmm.
like doing that stuff.
Okay.
Like I that's not where my passion is. My passion is really about the people and leading the people. And that's what I want to do. so even questioning, am I making the right choice?
Yeah.
Am I doing the right thing? And I have a lot of clients who talk about that, and at the beginning of the conversation, they're laying out options for something. What's my next career move? What's
Mm-hmm.
my next professional development? What am I going to focus on? And we talk about all the options, and at the end, they conclude what their heart was telling them in the first place. And so I don't know why we doubt ourselves so much.
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
So you're not going to tell us the answer why we doubt ourselves. Everybody's listening. And all right. Yeah. So let's move on, because now,
Yeah.
we focused on what it is, why we're experiencing, how we can see people that might have it. But let's talk, like, how do we get over it? How do we get past it? What can we do?
Yeah. Yeah. And the good news is there's lots that you can do. First and foremost, I would say take care of yourself. And this is so important. And I think women, especially mothers, are not always good at this. They don't, because they're so busy taking care of everybody else.
Yeah.
And sometimes their care is last on the list, and often they don't get to it. But I always say you can't pour from an empty vessel.
Yeah.
And so you need to take care of your physical self, your emotional self, your spiritual self, and always be filling your bucket, filling your cup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would say, that's one of the most important things.
Yeah.
And be aware of those thoughts that you're thinking. So I like to use the term notice and name.
Okay.
So when you're looking at that job description and you're seeing how you're measuring up and you're going, wow, I only have this and this, I don't have this, maybe I won't qualify, I'm not even going to try, and stop and go, wait a second, what am I doing here?
Mm.
Right? Like I can grow into this.
Yeah.
So noticing and naming when those limiting beliefs show up. It's funny. I was just speaking with a good friend of mine last night, and she was telling me the story of a job that she had applied for, and she was up against another candidate, and the other candidate ended up getting the job. And she was quite upset because she felt she had more qualifications and would be a better candidate for this job, but she didn't get it. He got it. And a few months later, they ended up letting him go because he didn't meet expectations, and they came back to her. And she was highly offended and said, no, thank you. And then, a few months down the road, they both begin different jobs, and he ends up getting a VP role and she ends up getting a director role in two different organizations. And and then I asked her, well, what kind of role do you want to go after? Why don't you go after a VP or an
Yeah.
AVP or whatever? And she gave me this list of reasons why that's not going to happen, or that's not how it works. And I was just kind of taken aback by, like, here you are telling me how qualified and how you can outperform this other person.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when we talk about going after something that he's already got, you're already saying, no, no, no.
Yeah.
So noticing when you're doing that and calling yourself out on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another thing you can do is to be mindful and to practice. And so meditating,
I think that's hard for some people. Just meditating for some people means quiet.
mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, but I'm not sure how many quiet moments are in my brain. It's minimal. Like, right?
Yes.
My brain doesn't turn off.
Yes.
And I have to get up at 5:30 just to have my quiet time or my self time, but I have to
Mm-hmm.
listen to things to, like, meditate. So
Mm-hmm.
touch a little bit on that, and just, what does meditate mean for you or for other people? Or, because I'm sure it means different things.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say, yes, there is the meditation where it's, complete silence, and those thoughts are going to come up. Absolutely. And so the key there is just to go, oh, hey, that thought's there. Push it away. Back to the breathing, right? But there are guided meditations. And because you're hearing, somebody's voice, that helps you to keep your voice quiet, the voice in your head quiet, or prayer. Prayer is a great form of meditation. So I think it can be different things for different people, but just, taking that time. For me, it's just 5 minutes. Right? Like I can't imagine sitting for an hour in total silence. And
I totally appreciate you saying that, because I'm thinking, I don't have 30 minutes. Okay, 5. Start 5. Yeah. Thank you.
Wake up in the morning, pour my coffee, sit on the table, and just take 5 minutes, right? And just be in that moment. Or journaling, writing about what's going on for me. What are the feelings that are coming up? What am I thinking?
Yeah.
And why am I thinking that? And what am I going to do? How am I going to change my thinking so that I get what I want?
Yeah.
Or I get to where I want to go. So there's that mindfulness. And then I think another tool is to stay curious. So, what's going on for me here? If I'm thinking I don't deserve to be in this meeting or among this group of people, or, when you're nominated for an award, well, it's just a treat to be nominated. Well, why are you thinking that way? What is it that leads you to think that you don't deserve to be part of that group?
Yeah.
What's going on there? And are there patterns?
Yeah.
Does this show up over and over and over in your life? And then I think a really great way is to turn your inner critic into your inner cheerleader and start celebrating those moments. And it has to be intentional. You have to make that choice to celebrate. Hey, you know what? I'm really great at this.
Yeah.
Like way better than, some of these other people.
Yeah.
Or maybe you have to write notes around your house to remind you, sticky notes on the mirror, like, hey, you cooked supper today. That was amazing.
High five!
Right? You included vegetables in the menu. Isn't that awesome? Or if you have to call a friend, sometimes we have these great friends who are so good at reminding us how wonderful we are and what a difference we've made for them in their lives. Yeah. And so, surrounding yourself with people who will support you and lift you up and tell you what you want to hear when you don't hear it yourself.
Because I think sometimes we think we're going at it alone, and we're not. And just to share, like you said, call a friend, share those feelings. You're not alone. We are not alone. I have leadership groups that I meet with Wednesday mornings, and we are all telling the same story. How we handle them is very, different. We're older now, but we are all experiencing it, and how we laugh at it, or, we need to share. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember, so my first child passed away when she was a week old. And I remember after then, how many people came to drop off a card or bring us a meal and tell me about their experience. And, it's not something that everybody talks about. You don't, that doesn't come up in everyday conversation.
Right.
But when you go through that experience, it's amazing how many people come out of the woodwork and say, yeah, I've been there too. I know what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And I'm here to help.
Yeah.
So, really having that community, I think.
Yeah. It is really
important.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. I remember teaching, I went to speak at a class, and I'm going to name her. Tana Rowe asked me to come speak in Moose Jaw at her school. And in my speech, I said, fake it. I began wearing a set of pearls every day because that made me dress up. Like I needed to step up to the role. I got hired to be a bigger position, but the pearls were the start. And then with the pearls, you had to put your makeup in your hair, right? Because you were wearing pearls. Yeah. And I said, fake it till you make it. Tana never corrected me during the class, but at the end, she came and said to everybody, we say face it till you make it. I'm like,
Oh,
oh, and
I
I
love
changed my
that.
language after that. I was like, you know what? That's
Yeah.
exactly, because fake kind of sounds fake, obviously, but
Yeah.
face it. So it's a little
Yeah.
bit, I'm going to face this, and
Yeah.
I am going to make it. But yeah,
Well, and
so
Lisa, people are so willing to extend grace
yeah,
when you admit that, you know, I'm not great at this.
yeah.
I like showing up and saying, hey, this is the first time I've ever done this. I'm going to do my best. And people are already cheering for you,
Mm-hmm.
rather than showing up and making a complete fool of yourself. I always think of like a waitress in a really busy restaurant. And I think about, two ways that different servers will deal with that situation. And one server might come to the table and say, hey guys, I'm so happy you're here. As you can see, we're super busy, but I'm going to do my best to get you
Mm-hmm.
everything you need. And if I'm not paying attention, just, wave your hand and call me over. And then the other server that, runs past you and
Yeah.
throws menus at you and says, we're really busy today.
I'll get back to you.
I'll get to you back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you think about, that experience, that different experience, and how much grace you will extend somebody when they're a bit vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
And tell you like, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to be great. Just give me a moment. I will
Yeah.
be a great
Yeah.
server to you. Oh,
For
that's good.
sure.
So before we continue on to, we're going to switch the mood switch the mood. We're going to switch the mood. Move on to sort of the spiritual, because I think we got a little bit to talk about there. Do you have anything to add about getting over the imposter syndrome? Any other points, or I don't want to cut you off?
I think the last one is really ignore it and do it anyway. So
Oh,
that little
yeah.
voice in your head is going to tell you, you're not good enough. You don't measure up. So shut up, not today, and do it anyway. I read Mel Robbins, who wrote a couple of books. She wrote the 5-second rule and then the high five habit. I've read the first one and partially read the second one. And some of the things that I take away from her is you're never going to feel like it, but do it anyway. So, if you've set a goal and it's going to take a lot of work to get there, you might not feel like getting started,
Yeah.
but do it anyway. Because once you get going, then you start to gain momentum, right? And you make some progress and it feels good. And then you keep going.
Good.
So push that voice aside.
Yeah.
Do it anyway. Yeah.
We're going to come back to that voice in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But so let's talk a little bit about your spiritual journey, and just give us a little bit of, because I can tell you, and I've only interviewed you for 5 minutes prior to this about your book. And in that time, I knew that you were faith-based. And it was in the way you presented, the way you spoke. It was everything about you. So just give us a little about your spiritual journey to date so we can understand.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and it was my mom who took my sister and I to church every weekend. And so, went through all the sacraments, went to mass every Sunday or Saturday night. And then on the other side, I had this father who wasn't religious, did not go to church with us except for on Easter and Christmas, and sometimes brought a book with him to read, and it wasn't the Bible. But he really lives the life of a Christian and gives to people. And he has volunteered on so many boards. He does random acts of kindness all the time. And really just wants to help people and make a difference. So I saw that, that structure of religion, but also, how to live a life of love, basically.
Wow. That's really good. Because I think of my own family. Mom dragged us to church. And my dad was the greatest man, just a giving man. And everything you just said there makes me think of him differently right now. So, thank you for sharing that. What I want to talk now about is, there's people who are listening who are are not Christians. They, and they're listening and they want to be there. And I know that when I grew up Catholic. I don't know if whoever's listening might knows I grew up Catholic, married a Mennonite. It's like a joke. We're practicing Baptists. But I remember leaving the church when I was so young. And then I found that I was missing something, and it took a long time, and I came back to it. In that time, though, I remember going to church and meeting with my care groups and meeting with these ladies, and they knew scripture like nobody else. And they knew where to find those stories in the Bible. Like, they were awesome. And I kept coming and thinking, I feel like a phony. Yeah. I feel like a fraud, and I remember feeling that because I wasn't them. I wasn't that good at, and I mean, I show up here at this podcast for that reason, just to keep myself in the word and, hearing people's stories. But I just know if you can touch it, it's really kind of the same thing. I'm thinking the imposter syndrome can be seen anywhere between our personal, professional, and spiritual.
Yeah. And, when you talk about imposter syndrome, I think of being a Catholic and growing up in that Catholic church with the things that the church preaches. And there are some times when I struggle with some of those teachings and how I feel or what I believe in my life. But I always think it could be any religion, right? It's about faith. It is about faith in something bigger than yourself and purpose, really. What is the meaning of life? Mm-hmm. And for me, the meaning of life is love and about sharing with the world my love. And how do I leave the world a better place than when I showed up? Mm-hmm. And, it could be just one person I make a difference for. It doesn't have to be, changing the world, even though I'd really love to do that.
Yeah.
It's just about letting people know that they are important and valuable, and treating them with love and respect.
Yeah. It really is. A comment I was going to make is just, when you don't know where you're coming from and you feel like that, what if people find out? Earlier, and I was going to come back about that voice, and I know where that voice is coming from. It's not God, like it's the other guy, and he's the one that's in the back of my head saying, "You're not good enough. You'll never be like them." Well, why wouldn't he say that? Why, but all the advice you've given is just so easy. It's not easy, but it's easy to understand. We just need to ignore it and put it somewhere and know that we're better. But for me, it was identifying that voice that was saying all this crap that, you are an imposter, you're phony. Where's that coming from? No, we're not listening to that. So, yeah. So
I think too, Lisa, it's really about making the effort.
Yes.
Right? Like you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to show up as some superhero. Just show up. Right?
Right.
Just show up and be open and curious and wanting to learn and grow and make a difference.
That's good. Yeah. But can I bring my cape? Because I love my
Yes, definitely bring the cape.
All right.
Definitely.
So we're sort of in the end, but I want to ask you, how are you integrating your personal, professional, spiritual? And I mean, I listen to you. It sounds in everything you do. And I know that when I went to look for a business coach, mine was faith-based, and that I intentionally made that choice. So when I listen to you in the way you talk, I'm sure people can. I mean, I picked it up in our 5-minute interview a while ago. But how do you have anything to add on your integration of all these, personal, professional, and spiritual for anyone listening?
I think it goes back to when I had that first child, because at that point in my life, I spirituality wasn't really huge in my life. And when my daughter passed away, I had to find meaning in that, because in that moment, I had a choice. I could choose to feel miserable and sorry for myself and let that permeate everything that I did and said. And I could also choose to learn something and take something away from that experience. And that's what I did. I decided that I had that experience, that for whatever reason, God had given me that experience so that I could do something with it. And I chose to take that and help me to be a better leader, to be a better human. And I found that it has helped me be more empathetic. It has helped me not to assume that people are doing well, or that to understand that people go through hard things all the time that we never know about or we never hear about, and to give people that grace. And I think now when I show up, so my mantra when I am meditating in that 5 minutes of the morning, I say to myself that verse from the Bible, be still and know that I am God. And then as I exhale, I say, let me be your light in the world. So when I encounter people, I want them to feel like they are seen and they are heard and they are understood. And so I'm not perfect. It doesn't happen all the time with every single encounter, of course, but that's how I try to show up.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I knew I liked you. From our conversations, it's just, you're very thoughtful. You're very, very slow and thoughtful in your speaking. And we stop and we listen and we care. So I've got two final questions for you that I ask everyone. So LeaderImpact, I know that you're not a member. You're, very busy leading women in leadership for Saskatchewan. But we're all about, like many others, having a lasting impact. And so as you continue through your own journey, your leadership journey, we just want to ask you, what is your, what faith legacy do you want to leave when you leave this world?
I want to help other people be confident and effective leaders. I want them to understand what it means to care about the people that they are leading. And really it's about creating other leaders and lifting as you rise.
That's good. And my last question I ask everybody is, what brings you the greatest joy?
There are so many things. And if I didn't say my children, then what kind of mother would I be? But aside from my amazing, wonderful, smart, and talented children, the greatest joy is when one of my clients says to me, you have helped me so much. You've made a difference in my life. I feel so much better. And the funny thing is, I don't tell anybody what they should be doing, or coaching doesn't work like that. I simply ask them questions to get them to think about things. And they're the ones who come up with the amazing light bulb moments. They do all this work by themselves. But it's such a wonderful feeling that I can be there to help them get there.
Yeah. If only our kids said it to us. Mom, you've helped me so much. Yeah. Yeah.
That only happens after they have kids of their own.
Okay. Yeah. I'll wait for that day. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you, Keri, for joining us. It's been an amazing conversation about imposter syndrome, because I don't think I'm the only one, and I don't think our listeners, well, we think we're the only ones. But thank you for spending time with us.
It has been an absolute pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you, Lisa.
All right. So if anyone wants to get a hold of you or find you in any way, how can they find you?
They can find me on my website. It is just 3 W's, ellevatecoaching.com. And Ellevate has 2 L's, and that is for the feminine. So it is intentional that I misspelled Ellevate. Yes, ellevatecoaching.com. Yeah.
All right. Well, good to know. I was going to ask you why the 2 L's. Huh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right. Well, if you're part of LeaderImpact, you can always discuss or share this podcast with your group. And if you are not yet in a LeaderImpact group, we would love to have you. Check out groups available in Canada at leaderimpact.ca, or if you're listening from anywhere else in the world, check out leaderimpact.com or get in touch with us by email, info@leaderimpact.ca, and we will connect you. And if you like this podcast, please leave us a comment, give us a rating or review. This will help other global leaders find our podcast. Thank you for engaging with us. And remember, impact starts with you.